Long before the sun came up, polling stations across West Bengal were already overwhelmed. Voters formed massive lines that spilled into the streets, sharing space with local wildlife, like this elephant waiting near a queue in Jargram. That early morning rush translated into a staggering statistic: 92.47% voter turnout. It is the highest participation rate the state has seen since Indian independence, with women voters driving the bulk of that participation. To take control of the state government, a political party needs to secure exactly 148 out of the 294 available assembly seats. Every single vote cast that morning fed directly into that math. The force pulling tens of millions of people to the polls was a bitter rivalry. On one side is the incumbent chief minister, Mamata Banerjee, and her Trinamool Congress party. On the other side is the Bharatiya Janata Party, making an aggressive push to take the state. That 92% figure is inseparable from the way the state's voter rolls were recently managed, and how those administrative changes shifted the stakes for every person in line. This bar chart shows the total registered voting population in West Bengal dropping from 7.66 crore down to 6.82 crore. That drop happened because the Election Commission conducted a Special Intensive Revision, or SIR, an administrative sweep that deleted roughly 9 million names categorized as duplicate, deceased, or absent. Because the total electorate shrank, the math of the election changed. When you divide the actual number of votes cast by a suddenly smaller denominator, the final percentage spikes, even if the physical number of people who show up at the booths remains the same. These deletions occurred alongside intense rhetoric over the Citizenship Amendment Act and border security. For many communities, having their name deleted from the rolls wasn't just an administrative error, it was perceived as a direct threat to their legal right to stay in the country. This fear drove millions to the polls, specifically to reassert their existence on the record. The 92% turnout is the end result of an administrative revision that shrank the voting pool and a political climate that made failing to vote feel like a risk to one's identity. With that anxious electorate colliding with the voting infrastructure, administrative breakdowns started early. Across several districts, electronic voting machines malfunctioned, bringing lines to a complete standstill and frustrating voters who had waited hours in the heat. The strain on the system caused protocol to break down entirely in some areas. In the Pingala constituency, election authorities had to suspend an entire polling team after staff abandoned their booth in the middle of the day, leaving the station completely unmanned. That frustration escalated into violence between rival candidates. In multiple districts, organized groups attacked campaign convoys, throwing stones that shattered windows and forced candidates to flee with their security details. The heavy presence of armed Central Reserve police forces didn't always calm the situation. In Dubrajpur, allegations of voting machines registering the wrong votes sparked protests outside a booth. When security troops intervened, angry locals pelted them with stones, ending in a physical clash. These physical flashpoints show the real-world consequence of the voter roll deletions. The anxiety over missing names and broken machines immediately weaponized an already tense electorate. While the clashes made statewide news, the election won't be decided by the broad mood across all 294 seats. The actual outcome rests on a much smaller scale, roughly 65 fault line constituencies, where the margins are incredibly tight. Take Nandigram, for example. In the 2021 election, the BJP candidate secured a victory there by a margin of just 1,956 votes. This diagram shows how that 1,956 vote victory margin compares to the new reality. It is completely dwarfed by the 14,000 voter names that were recently deleted from Nandigram under the roll revision. In micro-battlegrounds like this, you don't need a wave of public opinion to alter the outcome. Administrative roll deletions carry enough mathematical weight to erase previous margins and flip the state government. Despite the record turnout and the long lines, the electorate walked away from the voting booths and stayed silent. Voters largely refused to speak to post-election survey teams. That silence led to a collapse of the forecasting models. Several major polling agencies completely abandoned their exit poll predictions because they simply couldn't gather enough data to make a reliable guess. The only way to cut through the noise is to wait for the actual machines to open. On May 4th, officials will unseal the voting hardware across 77 heavily guarded counting centers throughout the state. From there, it becomes a slow, methodical grind. Observers will track the seat-by-seat tally throughout the morning, watching the numbers tick up until one party finally breaches that 148-seat majority mark. This election serves as a structural stress test for West Bengal. Between the millions of deleted names and the tens of millions of cast ballots, the final tally will either lock in years of continuity for the incumbent government or force a transfer of power.